This week at The Agenda, examine Porter Airlines' hope for expansion at Toronto's Island Airport, the role gender plays in politics, and efforts to bring people back from the margins. Our week in review begins with a female premier on gender politics. How would you describe your particular political style?
Well, I really, that word collaborative applies for me across my endeavor. So whether it's reaching across the floor to talk to the leaders of the opposition, or within my caucus, or within my cabinet, I don't think I have all the answers. And so it's really important to me that the people around me, from my staff to my colleagues to people who aren't necessarily my partisan colleagues but are in government with us, I mean, it's very important that I hear from them. And beyond that, hearing from people outside. I mean, I know that I'm being teased everywhere about conversation, but having conversations with people from rural communities, people who are involved in the agriculture sector, or people who are involved in small manufacturing in some of our northern communities. Those are really important conversations.
I hear you, but most politicians, I remember Hillary Clinton when she ran for the Senate, she went on a listening tour. And it was, let's face it was a lot of PR, I think, involved with that. And, she may have been listening to give the impression that she was listening, but she'd been in public life for 30 years and frankly had all the answers. So is it really the genuine article when you say, I'm here to have conversations and listen?
Well, it is, because I don't care how long you're in politics. You don't have all the answers, because the landscape changes. Over a period of 30 years, things change. In 30 years in Ontario, our manufacturing base has changed. In 10 years in Ontario, our manufacturing base has changed. So it's not a static, it's not a permanent state. We have to continue to learn. We have to continue to ask questions. I mean, a really good example right now is the way our climate is changing. We're trying to slow that down and be as green as we can. But the fact is, our climate is changing. We're dealing with different realities in Muskoka today. Yep. With flooding, that we haven't dealt with maybe ever before. So we have to constantly learn as politicians and understand what people are dealing with.
Do you think you were born, I don't mean to put you on a shrink's couch here or something, but this style of politics that you practice, is this something you developed, or were you born this way, or help us figure that out?
Well, I can talk about myself. I can talk about how I was raised, but I think generally women are socialized differently, and we can have the nurture-nature argument, and we can talk about all that. But I do believe that there are different expectations on young girls than there are on young boys.
And were there on you back in the day?
Well, I'm the eldest of 4 girls in my family. I had a lot of confidence, and I believed I could conquer the world. But I grew up needing to pay attention to how my sisters were doing and learning how to be a caregiver. I mean, I watched my mother looking after 4 little girls. I went into school understanding that part of my job in the world was to look after people. And I think that is, that's a personal learning and attribute, but I think there's something to that in terms of the way women function. I have said many times that one of the jobs that prepared me the best for being a politician was being a mother, because you multitask more as a mother than just about in any other job I've done, and I've done a lot of jobs as a young person and into my adulthood. So learning how to care about people and follow the thread of a thought and a conversation and worry about people's where they're really at, that's something that I bring to the table.
Let's actually try to find out if things have changed at all at Queen's Park since Kathleen Wynne became premier, because she has said, excuse me, that she wants to do politics differently insofar as more collaborative, more conversational, less confrontational, which I guess some would argue that evokes a kind of a feminine style of politics. It speaks more to her gender. Would you say that style has changed the way you do business at Queen's Park?
I would say that nothing really has changed. I mean, we've heard
Nothing,
what
really?
Kathleen Wynne is saying. She wants to have more respectful conversations. She wants to be more collaborative.
Well, that's already
she wants
different
to
from the
talk
previous
more
guy.
Well, but she's saying that, but she's not doing that. We still have the same issues with respect to the gas plant cancellations, for example. She wants to be open and transparent, but are we hearing anything about what has happened with the cancellation of the Oakville plant? No, we had to wait for the Auditor General to come forward with the Mississauga plant. She said that she wanted to have more local decision-making with respect to wind turbines and energy projects in primarily rural municipalities. Well, we had a private member's bill yesterday that came forward that would have been a perfect opportunity, but the Liberals voted it down. So I hear what she's saying, but actions speak louder than words, and we're not seeing that being put into action.
Okay, but let me follow up with this. The last guy on Election Day in 2011 came in and said, I'm one seat short of a majority, this is a major minority, and governed that way. Premier Wynne has basically been spending the last couple of months that I can see trying to reach out to you, I had some pretty good meetings from what I understand with Andrea Horwath in order to get stuff done. I mean, that's different already, isn't it?
Well, let's put it this way. We definitely want to get stuff done in the NDP, and that's why I was elected. Unfortunately, I'm hearing the same things that Christine is hearing. Certainly the gas plant, we're not hearing a direct apology. We're not hearing somebody taking responsibility. That's huge. I mean, this is hundreds of millions of dollars that could have gone to feed our 1 in 7 children who live in poverty, among other things. But the budget will be the test. When the budget comes, and we hear it's coming this spring, then that's where the rubber hits the road. We'll see whether she actually delivers on all of those utopian things she was talking about in the throne speech. Will she actually deliver? Will she actually come through on what the minimal demands we've asked her to or not? And that will be the beginning probably of a different kind of conversation, I would think.
Okay, but I'm going to push you on this a little more, because when Dalton McGuinty and Andrea Horwath, your leader, had meetings, that didn't go well. And, nobody kept records, and they came out of it, and both sides were saying, you agreed to this, no, you agreed to this, and it really became very poisonous. Your leader and Premier Wynne have already had, I think, a few meetings, and basically they seem to have gone pretty well. And the new Premier seems to be pretty collaborative, at least on the surface, on the way she's doing things. Isn't that different?
The spin is different. The seems to be
You're
is
not going to give it
different.
to her, are you?
Well, I'm just speaking from experience of the House, and Andrea has been up every day, hammering about the gas plant, hammering about the chemotherapy mix-up, which has affected people's lives very directly, and not seeing somebody standing up and saying, yes, it is our responsibility. We will try to make this right. We will give you the figures on the Oakville plant. No, we're seeing the same old evasion. And on the chemotherapy, we're not seeing a health minister, who is the deputy leader, stand up and say, yes, it is my health ministry's responsibility that something went very grievously wrong with the chemotherapy drugs that were given to patients. We're not seeing that. We're seeing the same old dance. Now, I just ascribe this to the same old, perhaps some of the same old advisors in the back room who are advising them to behave a certain way. But, I mean, I've worked with Kathleen. I like Kathleen. It's not personal. But you can't just say you're going to do politics differently and then stand up and do it the same old way.
John, let me try this with you, because last time you were on this program a few weeks ago, we talked a bit about the fact that 20 years ago, when Lynn McLeod was the first female Liberal leader in the province of Ontario, people like you advised her that she needed to kind of be a little more macho and demonstrate, quote unquote, more masculine qualities in order to stand up to people like Mike Harris and so on. It seems this time Kathleen Wynne seems quite comfortable not doing that, being more consensual, being more, in her words, conversational. So what's changed?
I've been watching Wynne really closely, and it's fascinating. I think she has a style that involves approaching a situation where there are two different competing points of view and sort of pulling it together into a common ground position that links to the public interest. So I'll give you an example. On casinos in Toronto, you got people who say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread and it's going to float a huge amount of the city's future. You got people saying these things are terrible. What Wynne's done is she said, look, one of the things here that you guys are going to have to settle is what's the hosting fee look like. So I can tell you this, you all sort it out amongst yourselves whether you want one or don't, but there's going to be no special deal for Toronto. That's not the same as getting in there and conciliating. It's actually drawing the point of consensus out and leading around that.
In fact, she's very carefully not taken a position on the whole thing.
The exact same pattern is being played out in regard to the transit and mobility debate in the GTA, which is a huge debate that I know has been the subject of a lot of attention on this show this week and will be going forward. You have got, in the community that cares about transit and congestion and mobility in Toronto, roads and transit, you have got so many different factions. You've got people who want this mode, this vehicle, this route, this tool to pay for it, this mix of tools to pay for it. You've never seen so many squabbling different people with a different point of view, and they all argue them with great passion. What Wynne has done is said the most important thing is to draw out of it that we're going to move this thing forward, that we're going to come up with a way to pay for it that's not just going to be the traditional tax base of property taxes and provincial taxes. We're going to do something new here, and that's the common ground point that she's drawn out. So it's not just conciliation, Steve, and in a way it solves the old problem that I used to run into with Mrs. McLeod and advised her so badly on. Because the problem used to be, if you conciliate, you look weak if you're female, and if you don't conciliate, you can come across as macho. And a phony. This is a style that she's developing that I think squares the circle really nicely.
Let me try this with Sylvia. The teachers' situation. We had Greg Lyle in this studio a couple of weeks ago, and according to his polling, solving the teachers' situation was the #1 problem this government had to face. Not health, not jobs, not the economy. It was solve this bloody teachers issue. And she did. Are you here today to say that whatever different qualities she brought to the table as a woman helped her get a faster solution than maybe a man would have got?
Well, I think the research shows, Steve, that on average, women politicians do come from different professional backgrounds than men. On average, they are less likely to have a business or law background. They are more likely to come from what we might call the more feminized professions historically, like social work, like education, like journalism. Kathleen Wynne has a very long history as a school trustee. She has a long history of what we could call extra-parliamentary activism with the anti-amalgamation movement, Stop the Megacity here in Toronto. She's got a lot of community organizing experience. That is very different from the career of, let's say, a litigation lawyer or an entrepreneur in the business sector. And so I think that the skills that people learn through community organizing, and we saw it with the President Obama as well, those are somewhat different skills that have to do with listening, with bringing people together, with empowering them to move forward. Because frankly, the model that John was talking about in terms of decisiveness and not being seen to be weak and so on, I think a lot of people have tired of conflictual politics, and they've seen, in particular the handlers of women politicians have seen that it's not effective to present a woman leader as something she isn't. If she's not a Bay Street corporate tycoon or banker or something, then you shouldn't present her as such. She is what she is, and that authenticity, I think, means something for the caucus and it means something for the public. And I think on the education file, clearly, Premier Wynne appointed a new minister, and she empowered the groups to come together and to reach some kind of consensus that I think matters for parents and matters for students.
And they did.
And they did. And I think she's trying to get out from under this poison chalice that we talked about, which is the sort of negativity surrounding the schools and teachers that comes out of the McGuinty years.
Megan.
Well, I think #1, as we talked about earlier, women are the key decision makers in so many aspects of how the family dynamics. And with the disruptions that were caused by the labor strife between the Liberal Party and the teachers last fall, they were the ones who had to leave work early. They were the ones who all had a major role to play in trying to figure out what to do with these kids, whether or not they're able to go to work that day. And that does have an impact on everything, business, health, because your employees may or may not be showing up to work that day. And so the dynamics that come into place. But I think what's really interesting with all the ladies across the country, whether you look at Christy Clark, who's struggling, and whether you look at Alison Redford or Danielle Smith, for that matter, is that they demonstrate that there isn't a uniform way in which a woman does politics. And I think it's important to recognize that what's taking place here in Ontario is great, but each of the women are demonstrating clearly a different style of leadership.
Different from the Premier of Quebec, to be sure, as well.
Absolutely.
Let me try this with you. We've got a minority parliament right now, but it is an utterly unique situation because we have, of the 3 parties represented in the legislature, 2 now led by women. Does that genuinely bring a different dynamic which might affect the way this parliament either does or doesn't work?
I think it does, and I think we've seen, if you
if you have the time to watch Question Period, how it's changed in the last couple of months. It's not that it's less, there are fewer difficult questions. It's not that people are being less challenging to the government, or that the government's they aren't being as tough on the opposition. It's that there's a different mood in the room. And you see the leaders having different kinds of conversations with one another. Equal Voice just had an event at Queen's Park where Christine Elliott, the deputy leader of the Conservative Party, Andrea Horwath, the leader of the NDP, and the Premier stood together and talked about the same issue in very similar ways. I think that makes a big difference to how the business of the House happens.
The new whisper jet that Porter plans to use for our North American expansion is the Bombardier CS-100. Its remarkable new technology makes it the quietest commercial jet in production, tailor-made for an urban airport like Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport. The CS-100 is comparable to the sound profile of the quiet Q400 that we already fly. We agree that there is no place for noisy jets on the Toronto waterfront, and that's why Porter is asking the City of Toronto for an exemption from the jet ban in place at Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport, only for the CS-100 Whisper Jet. With this approval, no other jet aircraft would be allowed to fly from the airport. And just so you get a sense about what's proposed compared to what's currently allowed, Control Room, can we bring this next shot up? We're going to just basically superimpose one plane over the other so you can see the comparison between what Porter flies now with what Porter hopes to fly. And yes, the jet is somewhat bigger, but they insist no noisier. Let's go around the table here and start with full disclosure. Lisa, have you flown Porter before?
Absolutely.
Do you like it?
I do like it in its first iteration as sort of that charming way to get away, to fly in a sweet way to New York, to take the ferry. Love that.
And avoid Pearson.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Hated the commute to Pearson. Bad air quality, of course, indicative of how badly our transportation system has been planned, that we are forced to commute very long distances and in stop and go traffic in order to get to a major international airport. That was the draw for me, for Porter.
Okay, hold
flying
it there.
very quickly
Hold
and sweetly.
We'll come to the future in a second. Joseph, do you fly Porter?
All the time.
Do you like it?
I love it because I can leave my office 40 minutes before flight time, catch a cab, take the ferry, walk to the plane, and I'm in the air.
How about it?
Likewise, I've taken Porter on a number of occasions, and we just recently moved, but my office was right around the corner from there, and I used to walk to the airport and take a flight. My sense is that for a lot of those short flights and commutes, makes a lot of sense.
Marcus?
I live downtown, about 10 minutes by bike from Porter. I haven't ridden my bike to take the plane yet, but you could. That's the great thing about it. It's so convenient.
So we got 4 Porter fans here, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Okay, in which case, when you heard the news that they wanted to expand and use these bigger planes, let's get to it. What'd you think?
Concerned, deeply concerned.
Deeply concerned?
Yeah.
How come?
I think it changes up the whole scenario of what was originally intended, which was short-haul flights at the Toronto Island, an option, an alternative, a decent little urban alternative to the big airport and the awful commute. By opening up the gates to jets, I think we've now entered a whole new frontier. I think that it would be Pollyannish to consider or even think that it's going to be exclusive to Porter, that we're not going to see a whole rush of other carriers with their old style Airbuses coming to Toronto Island.
But they insist that if you can keep the noise levels the same, there should be no reason to open it up to other planes.
But that's for a jet that's in development, never been built before. It's not like iPhones that come out every other year or every year. Airplanes are only rarely redesigned. And sure, the new one that's being proposed by Bombardier is a better, cleaner jet. A lot of jets that are flying right now around the world and that would ultimately be using the Toronto Island Airport are not new, clean. So I think there's a lot of doublespeak we have to get through.
So you're a no at the moment?
Absolutely
Marcus,
no.
what are you right now?
Well, I think if what Mr. DeLucia Porter is saying is correct, and the jets are roughly comparable in noise, then that, to me, erases a lot of the concern. He wants also to build a slightly longer runway, but if that doesn't impinge too much on the harbor, and he says it won't, then I think those are the two major concerns, and I think they've allayed those, at least in my mind. You have to remember a lot of the things that we have been said over the years about the horrors of what would happen if the island airport took off as a destination, which it has under Porter, have proved to be completely untrue. For instance, we're going to ruin the waterfront. Nobody would want to live there. Well, there are condos popping up all over the place, blocks away. It would ruin it as a recreational site. Well, tens of thousands of people stream to Center Island, which is minutes away. They go to the beach, they walk along the waterfront. They're just redesigning a part of Queens Quay there to make it more inviting, so it hasn't stopped waterfront redevelopment either.
So the doomsayers have not proved to be correct so far.
That's right.
And you feel there's no reason why they should be, even with this added development.
I don't think so. I don't see a coming catastrophe. Some councillors, for instance, Adam Vaughan, said they're paving over the lake. And another said, David Miller, the former mayor, said it's going to return the waterfront to an old industrial use. We should rip it up and put in a park. Well, I think the island airport is very popular in Toronto. People love it. They like flying Porter. And here's a businessman who wants to expand. He wants to create, he says, 1,000 new jobs. He wants to spend money on Canadian-made planes. It's all good.
He's having a hard time seeing the downside here. Do you see it?
Well, I kind of take it back to the main purpose of why we're putting an airport there, which is to support downtown living and, the downtown and waterfront's ability to be a place to work and to visit and to play. And if at any point the airport starts to compromise that, we've actually lost the reason why we're doing it. And we're starting to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs.
Is that your concern, that this development will do that?
Well, the concern is I think there's a threshold at which point, say, if you're no longer able to sit on a patio at the waterfront on a summer's day because of the activity in the airport, that's a threshold that we've gone over. And the big question in my mind is, at what point is there an undue impact, be it noise, be it, the profile of the waterfront, be it even the height cones and the travel space coming into the airport. There's a couple of things that we would need to very clearly establish as this is what supports downtown living, and this is what supports the downtown as a place to attract business. And if we pass those thresholds, then we're losing out.
Right. Let me ask the business professor. Do you think they've made the business case for an exemption for this new plane if it happens?
This is a very bold move on Porter's part, and it's also very risky from a business point of view.
How come?
Well, two things. From the operational point of view, they now will have two types of aircraft, which adds huge complexity to the operations. And every low-cost airline that I know of has succeeded because they have only one type of aircraft.
They kept it simple.
And kept it very simple. So he's got a challenge in his hands there. The other challenge he has is Air Canada and WestJet, because they're not going to allow Porter to come in without a fight.
They're going to want in too.
No, they're going to drop prices. So there'll be a price war. They can't get into the island airport. The slots are limited. I don't agree with Lisa, by the way, that all the other commercial jets will come in, because the slots...
Air Canada's already there.
But not with a jet.
In a very minor way.
They can't bring in an Airbus, for example, into that airport. It's not long enough. They'd have to double the runway to safely bring in an Airbus.
So given the complications you've just described, is it a slam dunk that if Porter gets its way, it will make more money?
No, it's not a slam dunk. It's a high-risk gamble. On the other hand, it's changing the whole nature of the game very significantly. Porter was a niche airline serving people who came in and out of downtown Toronto, basically. And now they'll have a North American footprint.
Do you object to this then?
No, I don't. I think it's wonderful for Toronto that we can now, if Porter succeeds, we will have business people who can travel anywhere in North America from downtown Toronto much more conveniently.
Will you humor me with a little speculation here?
Sure.
Okay, let's try this. I remember, I think it's probably 30, maybe 40 years ago, Max Ward started up this airline called Ward Air.
Yep.
And then he said, I need to expand, I need to go buy some more planes. And, you know, he had never really had any intention of buying those planes. What he wanted to do was get taken over, and that's what happened. Canadian Pacific, as it then was, bought him out, and Wardair doesn't exist anymore. And I guess there's some people who think Bob DeLuce is doing the same thing with Porter. He's making this claim that he wants to get bigger and buy these bigger planes, when in fact, what he wants is to be bought out. What's your view?
Steve, your Wardair's story is not supported by the facts. Right? The facts
That won't stop me.
No, I know.
But okay.
No, the facts about Max Ward were that he had a brilliantly successful vacation airline, right? And he had a brilliantly successful strategy. He then decided to expand into scheduled service. That was a big mistake, because that brought him into direct rivalry with Air Canada and Canadian Airlines. And a small, brilliantly successful airline doesn't do well against an incumbent who has very deep pockets and a great deal to lose.
But bottom line, you don't think this is about a future hope of being taken over by a bigger player?
No, I don't think so. I think DeLuce has airlines in his blood, and he'll want to run that airline for a long time. He's been very successful with Porter.
Okay.
And that's gone, that's part of his DNA now.
We're on the issue of housing right now, so let's bring up the numbers here. Beyond the human cost, obviously, that we've talked about tonight, there are real economic costs. For example, in 2006, a shelter bed at $1,900 plus per month is certainly cheaper than a provincial jail cell at more than $4,000 or a hospital bed at almost $11,000. But all of these are way more expensive than stable housing through either a rental supplement at $700 plus or social housing at just under $200. And to put that in context, according to data collected by the City of Calgary a few years ago, the annual cost of supports including healthcare, housing, and emergency service for a transient homeless person is just north of $72,000, while for a chronically homeless person, it's $50,000 more at $135,000 almost. Okay, you look at these numbers and what do you take from this?
I'm going to be blatant. I think we've built a whole industry around the poor. And I'm not excluded. I work as a social service worker right now, and my job depends on people being homeless, people being marginalized, people needing support. But we have built a whole industry, right from paramedics to emergency rooms to jail guards to social workers to housing workers, outreach workers. If we were to end the homeless problem across Canada, how many jobs would we lose?
Are you saying that we don't want to end homelessness because we've got too much skin in the current game?
I believe so. I believe we have the resources and the faculties to end homelessness or significantly decrease homelessness, but there's too much invested in the solution in different ways, if you could understand.
It's also, I think, again, it comes back to the prejudices that people have. Though I think people feel, you know, if people are choosing to be homeless or they're bad people or whatever, then, you know, shelters and day programs and soup kitchens, that may not be nice, but that's the best we can do. And I think, you know, if people knew more that that's actually really expensive, right? That when you keep people in a state of homelessness, it's expensive because their health worsens, their chance of running into trouble with police increases, that there are all those external things that happen when you're homeless. It costs a lot of money.
Well, let me get clear on that. I want you to react to what Teresa just said, that there are too many people invested in the status quo, and therefore there's no incentive to find a solution to homelessness.
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily agree with that. But part of, I guess, why is because, and I think it is happening though, is that we have particularly a federal government, but different levels of government, who it's really about choice. We could choose to end homelessness. Yep. We could choose to end hunger. We could certainly choose to end child poverty in Canada. But we have a federal government that has chosen to invest money in jails instead of in housing and instead of in childcare and early childhood education, all of the things that we know prevent homelessness long-term down the road. The work from Stephen's organization and crime. We have the answers, and I don't think it's that systemically Canadians don't want to help the homeless. I think that Canadians, it's part of a Canadian psyche, is to want to help. It's something I think Canadians can be quite proud of. But I do think that our politicians, particularly our current federal politicians, take an ideological choice to say, well, this is a population that we don't care about. It's their own fault. They're playing up on those stigmas, that preconceived notions about it's a choice. They could just choose not to be that way. Why don't they just get a job? And they're lazy. Those are not the Canadians that we're going to help. And I think that's what
I want to hear from Pat and then Paula on that. What do you think?
Well, listen, I'm not a policy expert per se in the housing and homeless, but I think my experience is that, yeah, we want to help these folks get tied into service. My job is really to get these folks tied to those social services in some way and to close the gap. For me, this is more about how do I connect to the systems that are already existing. If there's deficits in the system, then I think that's another discussion that perhaps we don't have time for today. But my idea is that I don't care who they are. If they're referred to me, whether they're homeless or not, or they're in a transient situation, I'm going to work to make sure that they access the services, whatever we have.
Okay, but Paula, do you ever say to yourself, boy, I sure hope we don't solve homelessness because then I'll be out of a job? Because that's sort of what I think I hear Teresa saying.
I think there's some truth to what Teresa is saying in that we do, in our attempts to be helpful to people, get stuck in certain ways of doing things. And then and we define ourselves as being helpful in those ways, and it's hard sometimes to imagine that maybe that's not the best way to do things. And I think that that's where we are in some ways now with this population, which I wish we wouldn't call them hard to serve.
What do you want to call them?
I want to call them evidence of our system failure. Because I think it's the problem of what we've been trying to provide as much as it is whether they're willing, it's not what they need. Oftentimes is what we're providing, and in particular, we're not providing that immediate access to housing of their choice so that people can begin to be responsible for themselves.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety on our website. That's theagenda.tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, or on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.